Hey guys, gwyned here, bringing you the finals from MPDC 16.09. On the top of your screen you have Adner. He's playing a variant of Kuldotha Hawk, and at the bottom is Joe Cool, and he is running White Weenie. Been a while since I've done these, got a new microphone, testing some stuff out, so I hope you enjoy the finals here. Let's get started. Right. So, looks like Joe Cool won the dice roll and chose to play first. And not surprisingly opens with a Plains and a Doomed Traveler. A great solid card. Nice 2-for-1, since as soon as it dies you get a Flying Spirit. And of course the flying on the Spirit is certainly not irrelevant, particularly in this deck which relies upon a lot of flyers to be able to push through damage. Great little card. And Adner will open here with a Plains of his own, a Flare Husk. The Kuldotha Hawk decks tend to play a lot of this kind of equipment. You get a nice early creature from the Germ token, and then you've got this Flare Husk at 6th round. It turns on Metalcraft. It gives you an artifact to bounce or destroy if you need to. It just does a lot of things for this deck. Does exactly what the deck wants to be doing. Back on his turn, Joe'll swing in with the Doom Traveler. Let's see if Adner wants to trade off the Germ token or not. He does. Not really I was going to say it's not really a good trade. In some ways, he's trading half of a card for the other half of the Doom Traveler. Losing the Germ doesn't hurt the Flare Husk that much. He still keeps the card, but it does turn his guy into a flyer. Don't know if blocking there is necessarily correct. Depends on who thinks he's faster. At this point, I assume that both opponents know what each other's playing. I guess it would depend on what he's got in his hand, but I think my intuition there would be to not block. But we'll see what happens here. And then Joe Cool's going to go ahead and play a Porcelain Legionnaire. I haven't seen this that much in White Weenie decks. I think because it's only got the 1 toughness, people have been a little leery to run it, but it really is such a great card. The ability to play a 3/1 first strike on turn 2 is really, really powerful. And of course, as soon as if you draw it any later than that, you can always just pay the full cost and not have to pay the life for it. So definitely a card that I expect to see more and more of as people realize just how good it really is. Alright, so back on his turn, Adner goes and finds his other color, plays the Silk Lifestaff out, and is going to destroy. It looks like he went ahead and destroyed the Flare Husk with his to cast the Kuldotha Hawk. Or I'm sorry, the Kuldotha Rebirth. The interesting thing about his list, and I commented this on my article, that he's actually not running that many artifacts, and particularly the Wellsprings, the Ichor Wellspring, that's such a hallmark of the Kuldotha Hawk deck. He's only running a couple of them, and he's got an additional one in the sideboard, but that's really the target that you want for the Kuldotha Rebirth. And I think he's only running 15 artifacts. And again, that really cuts down on the number of positive artifacts you can destroy. Destroying a Flare Husk, particularly in this matchup, really could be very relevant. So, as it were, let's get back into it. Joe will go and swing in with both, obviously, since the Lifestaff isn't equipped. No reason not to swing in here. Adner does not throw away a Goblin token to block. And then Joe follows it up with another Porcelain Legionnaire. So he's got a very commanding start. Has a nice blocker there to block the Goblin tokens as they're coming in. And Adner, interesting, has a Bonds of Faith that he goes ahead and plays on the Porcelain Legionnaire. That's interesting. I don't remember him having any of these main, but not really that big a deal. Swings in, leaving one of the Goblin tokens back. Interesting, it gets to go ahead and chump with the Lifestaff. So Joe will take 2, keeping the life total even. Yeah, he'll go ahead and equip the Lifestaff. Alright, back on Joe's turn. He just fearlessly goes ahead and swings in. Obviously, Adner has to trade in the Goblin token for no real value, but does get the 3 life out of it. So basically, a 2 life positive swing for him after damage. And then Joe has the second Doom Traveler. And then a third Porcelain Legionnaire. Wow, he's gotten definitely a good run of those here. And those are going to be pretty powerful. Alright, so there's an Ichor Wellspring. And a Faithful Suiting. Again, this is a new card for this particular archetype. I mentioned again in my article that he seems like he's replaced some of the draw effects that you can get with Glenhawk by using Faithful Suiting. I think it's good in this kind of deck because it allows you to get rid of any extra lands because neither of these decks really want much in the way of lands, so it allows you to filter out any lands and replace them with good cards. So interesting enough, Faithless Looting, although I think initially people thought it was really, really good, it actually is card disadvantage because you spend a card to draw 2 and then you discard 2. Unless you've got the ability to play them out of the graveyard, the first time you cast it, it's card disadvantage. Granted, the second time you cast it, at that point you're getting some good value out of it. But it's an interesting card to evaluate. Haven't seen a lot of it yet. I don't think it's as good as people thought it would be, but in the right deck, I think it could certainly work. All right, so he goes ahead and just drops in, looks like 2 lands. Again, that's exactly what you want to do with a Faithless Looting. It's good use for him, and he'll just suit up one of the goblins and doesn't attack with either one. Makes sense. And Joe will just kind of fiercely swing in. Interesting, I wonder if he meant to leave that back. And I guess it saves him some damage. So let's see what Adner chooses to do here. He just takes it. And Joe doesn't have a follow-up play. Second Ichor Wellspring. And that's it. Back on his turn, Joe has a stave off. Again, this is something that's, I think, a little bit unusual for his deck. I haven't seen much of these in the White Weenie decks, but he's actually got one of these main and a couple of them in the board as well. Allows you to drop off enchantments, which obviously is what he's doing here, but really has a lot of great uses. Even swing in against a monocolored deck and be able to connect. So great choice, I think. One that makes sense. You don't want to stack up too many of them. I actually had a discussion with Joe. Asked him if he found at times that in his hand he'd end up with a lot of the protection and not a lot of the creatures, but he says it really hasn't been an issue. But that's certainly something I would watch out for. You don't want too many of those kinds of cards in White Weenie because you'll end up with a lot of protection and not enough creatures. So here, Adner goes ahead and has an Incinerate for the Legionnaire. And we'll get some Life Swing off the Goblin. But otherwise, he'll take 5 and gain 3. So, that's still good for Joe, getting that damage in where he needs it. And leaving Adner at 11. So Jokels now has definitely a better board presence and is ahead on life as well. Let's see if Adner's able to come back here. Goes ahead and recurs the Faithless Looting, and again is able to get rid of a land and a Glenhawk Idol. Yeah, the Glenhawk Idol is interesting. If you have a lot of artifacts in hand, I think this could be decent. A really dedicated artifact deck can get a lot of work out of this. I don't particularly find the fact that it is not normally a creature to be that relevant. It's not actually all that often that an opponent wants to kill a card like this on their turn. And there's so much artifact hate floating around anyway. Actually, I'm not sure this is really a great card. And I think, personally, the Glenhawk is just far superior to it. I didn't have a chance to talk to Adner about his list, but that would be one of the questions I would want to ask, is why he picked the Idol over the actual Glenhawk. In any case, let's see what he's able to do now. Goes ahead and has a Geist Flame for the Porcelain Legionnaire. And in response, I'm guessing Joe has a Guardian's Pledge, pumps up his guys. Somewhat of a waste because, of course, you'd rather probably use it offensively than defensively. But, I think that's perfectly fine. It is going to give Adner a Geist Flame in his yard, which he will be able to use later to some good effect, considering all of Joe's creatures have 1 toughness. So he will suit up that final Goblin token, and Joe will just, again, continue to swing in. That's what you do with White Weenie. You turn all your guys sideways and continue to do so until your opponent is dead. Maybe play a couple tricks when they're necessary, but really you're just trying to swing in. So again, they'll do the life trade thing. Gain 3, but take a bunch, and now he's down to 9. Alright, see what else he's got here. Finds his 3rd Wellspring, which I thought I only had 2 in the list. This definitely is game 1. I'm beginning to wonder if that's interesting, if Adner's list that I reported in the article wasn't actually his list. Isn't that interesting? Alright, and this is another thing that's interesting about his deck. He's playing Gather the Townfolk. Haven't seen this in Uncle Doth the Hawk deck. It's very interesting. Gives him a couple more creatures, and of course if he gets low on life, he'd get a bunch more. Wonder, he's so close to 5, if it would have been better for him to hold that. But of course he may not have time. Gets 2 more tokens and is able to suit him up. That's probably the right call. Alright, back on Joe's turn. Again, what's he doing? He's turning all his guys sideways and attacking, because again, that's what you do. Alright, so he chooses just to block the Porcelain Legionnaire. Oh, he's going to block the 2 Porcelain Legionnaires, lose both his guys, but gain a little life off the Life Staff. comes actually out ahead on that deal. And let's see what else Joe has here. He's got an armored warhorse. You know, as a vanilla creature, this doesn't seem all that impressive, but a 2/3 for 2, that's, you know, that's pretty good value. The fact that in Pauper so many creatures have 2 power, the 3 toughness is actually really relevant. And just gives him 1 more attacker. Alright, back on his turn. Adner's able to sacrifice one of his Ichor Wellsprings with a second rebirth, giving him a fresh supply of creatures, which certainly is going to help. And he follows that up with going to recur the Geist Flame. But Joe, of course, has Mutagenic Growth. Again, this is a great card in this deck, as it doesn't have any way of casting it without paying the life, but it's basically a free card. I've mentioned before, I think anytime Wizards prints a free card, it's a mistake. Don't so much mind this in White Weenie, but in fact, I find this card to be very annoying because, again, you don't even have to have any mana free to cast it. In any case, he will keep his Porcelain Legionnaire alive against the Geist Flame, and Adner has no choice but to pass. And so you see once again, swing in with everything. And interesting choice there by recurring the Geist Flame, he wasn't able to equip the Life Staff, which means this is really just going to be devastating. Joe is representing, let's see, 6, 7, 8. You know, I think that's lethal right there. So he has to block, and he's not going to gain any additional value out of blocking. So of course he'll block the 2 big guys, lose 2 of his goblins, leaving him with 1, and drops down to 6. And Joe's got 5 lands. Definitely doesn't want to draw any more than that. And all right, let's see what Adner's able to do. Just equip the Life Staff. Oh, and he's going to swing in. Interesting. Okay, so I think that's probably a concession. There's really no reason to swing in there. And then he's just going to go ahead and use Artillerize to sacrifice Ichor Wellspring. I don't think I would have swung in the Goblin there quite yet. I don't know what he could possibly draw. Yeah, because that's, I'll get him down to 7, but it definitely seems like that was a slightly early concession. I would have wanted to be digging a little deeper before I just throw in the towel like that. So yeah, Adner gives him the good games, and Joe swings in once again. And that is how Game 1 ended. I'll be back in just a minute with Game 2.